Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard Tactics video. Now before we get into today's video, I would like to say a huge thank you to Sweet Sleep, but instead of E's, they're threes, for sending in some awesome pictures of his converted Imperial Guard army. Looks absolutely fantastic. That Baneblade conversion into some sort of driving mobile graveyard / mausoleum is absolutely fantastic and really cool. So thank you for sending these pictures in. If anyone else has got any cool pictures they want me to use for my videos, please consider posting them on my Facebook page, or you can email them to me at mordianglorytv@gmail.com. And don't worry, both the Facebook page and the email address will be down in the description below. But without further ado, let's get into today's video. Now, it's interesting. I've been keeping an eye on the old meta and the old competitive discussions online. And I've been noticing a few interesting threads which have been popping up here, there and everywhere on multiple forums about the Dark Elder and how can Space Marines beat them. Now, you might be thinking about Mordian Glory, this is an Imperial Guard channel. What do we care about how Space Marines can beat those damn pointy ears? Well, it's important because when I was reading through some of these threads, it made me realise that I think we are on the cusp of quite a serious meta change. You see, there was essentially a couple of ways that when these threads were really fleshed out, and you had Drukari players chipping in and you had Space Marine players chipping in, but mostly it was really interesting because some of the best responses were actually from Dark Elder players who said, well, this is how I have lost to Marines, or these are the mistakes that Marines made and the mistakes in their lists and armies that were made that allowed me to beat them relatively easily. And it made me realise, and I'll go through some of that analysis, don't worry, but it made me realise that actually we're on the cusp of a meta shift that could be quite favourable for the Imperial Guard, and it might even be that Guard have the potential to be a little bit of an anti-Dark Elder army, which would be fantastic. It might be we somehow, by other factions changing, we come up a little bit. So for once, perhaps we've had a shadow buff rather than a shadow nerf. Might be kind of interesting. I tell you what, I definitely think we're going to start seeing Guard allies being used in a few more lists. But let me present my evidence, and then you guys, the viewers, can tell whether you think I am mad or maybe I might be onto something here. So one of the big problems that Marine players have been facing and that Dark Elder players have been taking advantage of is that Marines are extremely elite at the moment. The current meta for 9th has very much pushed us in an elite army direction. So you're having armies like Space Marines who are turning up with things like Eradicators and Aggressors, units which are very durable. They've got toughness 5, they've got 3 wounds, and they don't really, until this point, haven't really needed screening, because what Marines have been able to do is just march up the board, take a few casualties, but between transhuman and a few other buffs, they've mostly been alright. And the problem that these players are now facing is that they have an almost total lack of screening, because they've not needed screening, because their units have been traditionally very tough. And so when you don't screen against Dark Elder, they are able to pick their fights against you. And because Dark Elder have such fantastic damage output, very fragile, fold like a wet paper towel, but when they're able to get the jump on you, they tear you to pieces, even if you are a transhuman Marine. But if we also look at other elite armies that are in the game at the moment, or other, I should say, competitive armies that are in the game at the moment, let's take a look at Death Guard. Now, those guys are the epitome of durable and elite. A lot of people are turning up with like 10 Blight Lord Terminators and just this really strong, immovable brick of units. And that's great for when you're having an elite off with the Marines, and it's whose Terminators or whose Blade Guard veterans can beat the crap out of the other person's elite unit. But the problem with this approach is that Drukari are very disruptive. You can send your 500 point 10-man Blight Lord Terminator unit with all the trimmings into, even if you get the drop on a unit of Witches, or maybe a couple of units of Witches, congrats, your 500 point Death Ball has killed maybe 200 points worth of Dark Elder, and then the counter attack comes and they will tear through your super durable unit. And so this is the problem that these armies are facing. They've been having this almost arms race of eliteness. And you start to see more, less and less intercessors and more Gravis armour, and now Dark Eldar have flipped that on its head. So what were the ways that, so that's the meta, that's why Marines have been struggling, that's why Dark Eldar are doing so well at the moment. They're very much anti-meta, they're flipping everything on its head. But what was the suggestions, what was the tactics that are starting to creep through, which are beating the Dark Eldar? Well, apparently, it's the less elite armies which have been having more success against the Drukari. So the problem with having these really elite armies is that the Dark Eldar units do something that the competitive people call trading very well. So essentially, it's this age-old concept of how many points did my unit cost and how many points of the enemy did it kill. So we go back to that previous example of you send your Black Lord Terminators in, they kill like 20 witches, but it doesn't matter because those witches didn't cost as much. And then those Black Lord Terminators all die. They traded very badly. You lost 500 points roughly for 200, 300 points. That's a bad trade. And so Dark Eldar trade really, really well because their stuff is just so damn cheap. It needs to be cheap because they fold like a wet paper towel. Even with cheap transports, those transports are only toughness 6. They're only a 4+ save. I mean, Tauroxes in the guard are generally seen as poo, and they've got a 3+ save and a toughness 6. So, and I think they've got 1 more wound or 2 more wounds than a raider. So, yeah, raiders are cheap, but they are flimsy. They don't even have an inbuilt -1. Sure, they've got a 5+ invulnerable save, but they don't even have an inbuilt -1. That's what Venoms have. So, what the counter to the Dark Eldar that was suggested online, and that appears to be actually working we're now seeing Marine players finally having to adapt, is instead of building, if you ever played anything like Stellaris or any other sort of 4X big space strategy game, you'll hear this term building tall or building wide. Now, a lot of elite armies would be an example of building tall, very concentrated, very much everything in one place, whereas building wide is your army is not as concentrated, but it is more spread out, but that has its own advantages. So Dark Eldar, so the suggestion was you should build wide, because you need screening, because once those Dark Eldar units, those witches, those incubi, even like the toughest Dark Eldar out there, well, toughest combat elite Dark Eldar, I should say. I don't want to forget about the things like the Taloses and the Rats and stuff like that, but even some of the elite durable Dark Eldar are only a toughness 3 and they've only got 1 wound. They might have a 2+ save or a 3+ save. They might have really good armor, but at the end of the day, a toughness 3 Terminator with only 1 wound is, he can be lasgunned to death. He actually can be overwhelming number of shots because you will get a lot of wounds on them. So that is what people have been suggesting. So rather than these really elite builds, instead you want to have screening. You want to have more intercessors because and key more long range firepower. So again, a lot of these elite builds, what do Death Guard do? What do Dark Angels, Terminators do? What do Gravis Marines do? All these really good armies, what do? They have medium range firepower. 24-inch range firepower is normally good enough for them, and they have lots of melter and they have some bolter, but they have a lot of melter essentially. Well, but witches fold to just plinking spare firepower. They've only got a 6 of invulnerable save, no feel no pain anymore. But things like raiders don't mind if you shoot a melter gun at them, or if you're an eradicator with a melter rifle, because they've got a 5+ invulnerable save. They don't really care. It's not a good trade for that melter gun. It's got a good chance of just being blocked by a 5-up. So the way you beat them is you have more shots and you go for quantity over quality. And this is where we lead into the guard part of the video. I know you guys are going to be saying it's been a big preamble, but I've set the stage and I've set the analysis, and now the final part 3, act 3 of the video is going to be how this is beneficial to the guard. So I mentioned that term, quantity versus quality. Well, that is something that we do very well in the Imperial Guard, in the old Astra Militarum, if you're a new blood, but if to us Longbeards, to the Imperial Guard. What do witches fold to? Quantity of crappy firepower. Well, guess what we have? We got the goddamn lasgun. Marines think they're all that with a 3-shot bolter. Welcome to a 4-shot lasgun, Like I have gunned down many witches with my lasguns. And then you might go, oh, well, what about Reaver jet bikes? What about Hellions? They can be toughness 4. Well, a lot of people who run Reaver jet bikes and run Hellions take the combat drug that makes them toughness 5. Well, you know who doesn't care about whether you're toughness 4 or toughness 5? The old lasgun. All the lasgun cares about is putting as many wounds on you as possible. And even those tough, if I was on video, you'd see me doing air quotations, those tough Dark Elder units have only got a 4+ save. I mean, that's not a big save. And even those, it's still, Raiders are very much the in thing at the moment, but there's still plenty of people rocking Venom spam simply because they haven't switched over the models yet. Lasgunning down Venoms is no problem. Sure, they've got a -1 to hit, but guess what? You wound them on 5s with the lasguns, not a problem. But you might say, but Mordian Glory, the Raider is the key component to the competitive Dark Elder list, and you've kind of been skirting around that fact. Well, my humble conscript, commissar or inquisitor, whoever is posing this question, if you're a conscript, I'm going to make you go to the commissar. Anyway, that's a very good point. Raiders are good at killing, are good. They are the key component to the Drukari. But guess what the Guard have, which is actually really good at killing Raiders? The old autocannon. Now, I know what some of you will be saying. Why wouldn't you take the heavy bolter? Get that extra shot. Well, in my battlefield experience, I have found that the autocannon is like kryptonite against Dark Elder vehicles. It used to be the take all comers, the autocannon. Now it has a very niche role as an anti-light vehicle weapon. Well, you know who only has light vehicles? You know which is the most key component to the Dark Elder list? That's the Raider and that's the Dark Elder. So now you might, previously I would have said you want to consider the heavy bolter because Raiders are already toughness 5, but now they've gone up to toughness 6. And that one niche that the autocannon retains, the take-all-comers thing that has been stripped down to fulfilling a really niche role, which is toughness 6 light armor vehicles without a -1 inbuilt. You know who's good at that, at killing that? The old autocannon, because you hit them on 4s because it's rated to have an inbuilt -1. As far as I'm aware, I could be, really making a big mistake here, but I believe that Venom has the -1 and the Raider doesn't. There are stratagems, I believe, that allow you to get a -1 on a vehicle, but I think it's, unless it's changed, it's only on bikes or infantry, but even if it's on vehicles, it's only one that they can do it on. But you've got the autocannon, which still hits them on 4s, but it wounds the Raider on 3s, because it's strength 7, and the heavy bolter used to wound it on 4s, but now it's gone to wounding it on 5s, which is a really, really big difference. And I don't think that extra shot makes up for it. I think the autocannon is that perfect weapon for taking down the Raider, and we can take them on every single squad. And do you know one of my genuinely favourite things to do with heavy weapon squads in 9th edition is, now that mortars have kind of gone the way of the dodo because they're just not quite good enough. I mean, they're okay for killing witches. You still want to have a squad or 2 of mortars, but I don't run 3 squads of mortars at the moment. I may change that, but I don't run 3 squads of mortars in 9th edition. I run 2 squads of mortars, and then I run a squad of autocannon heavy weapon teams, because they cost the same points. But the autocannon heavy weapon team, I cannot tell you, every single game that I've used them, they have punched well above the weight, because I just slap concentrated fire on them. I just slap that stratagem from the Greater Good on them. They get +1 to hit, +1 to wound. That means they're against their preferred target. They're hitting on 3s, and they're wounding on 2s. It's really good. It's really, really good. I have shredded Taurox Primes. I have shredded Venoms. I have shredded Raiders. I have shredded all the light vehicles that I commonly encounter without a problem. I've also shredded, Primaris Marines with them as well, but that was before the heavy bolter got the +1 damage. So now it's probably better to go for the heavy bolter on that. The better, heavy bolter's better shredding Marines now. But there you go. So the Guard have the tools. We have the quantity. We have the autocannon, which I'm making a big deal of the autocannon, but I'm just glad that it's got a really anti-meta role now. But what's most important is we have cannon fodder. Yes, we have durability in numbers, and the number one thing that was said, the way to beat the Dark Elder is by trading better. And the way you trade better is by having those units that go in and from the Dark Elder and kill something, kill the same points or less than they're worth. And who's not worth very much? A conscript. Well, in terms of points, it's not worth very much. In terms of tactical flexibility, it's fantastic. Couple of blobs of conscripts, string them out across your deployment zone. You can cover your whole deployment zone in 2 squads of conscripts, trust me. I was doing that when it was 6x4 tables. No problemo, Kimosabi. You can just cover your whole deployment zone in conscripts and the whole front line, and the Dark Elder will come flying in. You know what? Let them get that turn 1 charge. Let them get that turn 2 charge. You don't care. If they want to jump out of these raiders and whatnot, and they have to, because otherwise you're going to blow them out, the raiders, in your turn 1 and turn 2. They've got to jump out, they've got to munch a bunch of conscripts, and even if they munch the conscript with firepower and then get to the line behind that, guess what? You've got another line behind that, because if you're playing guard and you're playing infantry guard and you're playing competitive guard, what have we talked about? The 3-line tactic. If you've not watched that video, I will do my best to remember to link it to the end of this video. The 3-line tactic, which allows you to play very competitively in 9th edition. It means that you overwhelm, it means that you've got durability, it's anti 9th edition, it's anti-assault, it's very effective. 3-line tactic is the perfect Dark Elder counter, and we can do it. We have the technology, kind of, the AdMech I suppose had the technology, but we can beat them. We can beat them. So let me know what you think about this. I could be totally wrong. I have played a few games of 9th edition against Dark Elder, but I need to get some more in there. But my initial analysis, when I've been able to beat them, you know, I've beaten them as many times as I've lost to them now. When I've been able to beat them, it was by absorbing the charge and being able to counter-attack. And that's the key thing to take away from this. If you're building your guard list now, you need to be thinking to yourself, how can I absorb a charge? And then how can I counterattack? What's the old saying I always use? The guard can get hit hard, but they can hit back even harder. And that's what you need to do. Now, one last very important thing to mention. I was talking about turn 1 charges, turn 2 charges. One very last thing to mention is the Dark Elder are very good at flipping the, I don't know what you call it, the tactics meta, the strategic meta on its head. So one of the general rules for 9th edition is you want to push for the middle of the board, right? You want to push for that. Dark Elder want you to get turn 1. They want you to push for the middle of the board because that will allow them to get a turn 1 charge against you. It's okay to be aware of that threat, and it's okay to be aware that that's their tactic. You just have to prepare for it. So that's why I was talking about conscripts before. So I'm talking about this bayonet boys charge. I talked to him in yesterday's video. If you can bait them or force them, maybe the enemy will see the bait, but if you can bait them or force them into charging that first line of total cannon fodder, if you can force them to do that and then kill them afterwards, you might be alright. Now obviously they can fly, they can do some crazy things, these Dark Elder. They can fly over you with your raiders, but if you make a tight phalanx of 3 ranks, you don't give them any space to move in their turn 1, you keep the ranks tight. You make sure that they can't fly over you and get to that second line as well, the first line. It's going to take some tactics, it's going to take some measuring, you're going to be clever about it. But if you can absorb that first charge, then it's okay to take that middle ground, because again, guard can be the Dark Elder's kryptonite. We can do this. We can move forward. We can take those middle points. We can absorb that turn. We can bait them into doing a turn 1 charge. They think they're so clever doing that turn 1 charge. We can bait them into doing it, and we can hit them back. Once all those witches are exposed out on the battlefield, all those Kabbalite warriors, oh my, and they're all in the middle of the board, and you've got first rank fire, second rank fire, and you've got 11 orders, and you've got more than 11 infantry squads left over. You are going to hose them down big time. Big time. It's going to be great. Anyway, let me know what you think. Am I totally wrong? Do the Dark Elder simply have all the tools to deal with first, second and third lines of infantry? Who knows? We've got to go out there, we've got to play it. Has anyone had a chance to try this infantry horde out against them? Report back from the front line. Please let us know down in the comment section below. You know, it's always good to get other people's perspective. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and of course, I'll see you guys next time.